They shot Eli Grant at dawn, 3 plasma bolts and a smirk, and somehow, the most insulting part was that his coffee was still warm. From my scope in the Martian dunes, I saw the steam curl from the cup beside his fallen hand. The warlords of Crixer stood over him, laughing in that gravelly, insect-click way that made my skin crawl. They thought they'd cleaned up their mess. They didn't realize I was already lining up the next one. Eli had always said I was too sentimental for a sniper. He was wrong. I wasn't sentimental. I was just thorough. And right now, thorough meant avenging the idiot who used to quote bad movies while spotting targets for me. The Crixorian commander, Zurkel, raised his arm and barked something guttural. His soldiers began dismantling the human transmitter array nearby. They were wiping evidence, the kind you only care about when you've made a mistake big enough to shake a planet. I stayed still, hidden behind a ridge of red rock, wind hissing against my helmet. My rifle tracked the movement of Zurkel's crest, a thin membrane that fluttered when he was smug. I almost pulled the trigger, but Eli's voice echoed in my head from last week's mission briefing. Don't start a war unless you can win it, Lena. That was Eli, strategic even when drunk. So instead of shooting, I watched, memorized faces, recorded coordinates, and waited for the moment when vengeance would mean more than a bullet. When they dragged Eli's body into the shuttle, I finally exhaled. The sound fogged my visor. Mars was quiet again, except for the hum of distant turbines and my heartbeat hammering like a malfunctioning drill. I packed up, turned to leave, and that's when I saw it. A small black data chip half buried in the dust where I'd stashed my gear the night before. My stomach dropped. It wasn't there earlier. Eli must have slipped it into my kit before he was captured. I plugged it into my visor port. The recording was short, grainy video, Eli's face bruised and bleeding. Lena, if you're seeing this, I screwed up. Or maybe I didn't. Depends who you ask. Holt's dirty. Don't trust command. They're selling out Earth to the Crixorians. Find the file labeled Iris. Finish what we started. Then static. Then silence. For a second I couldn't move. Commander Holt, our superior officer, working with the aliens? It sounded insane. But Eli wasn't the type to gamble on fairy tales. I clenched my jaw, glanced toward the departing shuttle, and whispered, "Fine, partner. You start the mess. I'll finish the job." The wind picked up, scattering red dust across the empty ridge. Somewhere far ahead, a human trader and a fleet of alien warlords thought the story had ended. They were wrong. It had just found its narrator. Eli's data chip burned a hole in my mind the whole ride to Theta 9. The rover rattled across cracked Martian soil, every bump reminding me that revenge doesn't come with suspension. I replayed his message a dozen times, memorizing the static-filled tremor in his voice. Holt's dirty. Don't trust command. The words tasted bitter, like rust and betrayal. Commander Holt had been the one who recruited us, the man who said, "You want to save Earth? Start by earning Mars." And Eli had believed him. We both had. Turns out we'd just been currency in someone else's trade deal. By the time I reached the outskirts of Outpost Theta 9, I'd patched together a disguise from stolen armor and sheer sarcasm. The outpost was a joint human Crixorian facility, meaning it smelled like burnt oil and arrogance. I adjusted the alien envoy helmet I'd scavenged from a fallen scout and activated the translator pad. It immediately blurted, "Greetings, I come in pizza." Perfect. The guard at the gate tilted his insectoid head and hissed a question I didn't understand. I nodded confidently and replied, "Extra cheese." Somehow that worked. He waved me through. Inside, the corridors pulsed with fluorescent light. Human engineers mingled with towering Crixorians, each pretending the other wasn't disgusted by them. I ducked into a side chamber, plugged Eli's chip into a terminal, and decrypted the coordinates he'd embedded in it. The screen flickered, revealing a hidden communication log. There it was. Commander Holt, shaking hands with Zurkel, transferring files labeled Orbital Defense Matrix. My stomach twisted. Holt wasn't just dirty, he was radioactive. Selling out Earth's defenses meant billions of lives, maybe more. I laughed under my breath, half crazy. Guess dying was the only way to file a complaint around here, huh, Eli? An alarm blared overhead. Someone had triggered a security scan. I yanked the chip, stuffed it into my glove, and sprinted through the narrow halls. The translator patch kept misfiring, shouting random phrases like, "Praise the dough," and "Surrender your toppings." Every Crixorian I passed glared, confused. I burst into the cargo bay just as the lockdown doors slammed shut. Great. I was sealed inside with 3 alien guards and a crate labeled nutrient paste. One hissed, raising its plasma rifle. I kicked the crate open, grabbed a canister, and hurled it. It burst in a cloud of stinking green goo that coated their lenses. I dove behind a forklift, fired twice, and the room went silent. As I caught my breath, my visor lit up with a warning, "Security drones inbound." Then a message popped across the screen, encrypted but clear. "Welcome back, Lena." Holt's voice. Smooth. Mocking. He knew I was here. I looked up as the ceiling hatch opened, revealing a swarm of red drones descending like a mechanical storm. My pulse steadied. So this was how it started. The dead don't stay dead, and the living don't get to rest. I came to in a zero-gravity storage bay, spinning slowly among floating crates of nutrient sludge and broken drone parts. My wrists were bound with magnetic cuffs, my head pounding like a snare drum inside a vacuum. Holt had been efficient. He didn't kill me right away. That meant he was planning to make a point. I hated points. They always involved monologues. Through the bay's viewport I could see the orange curve of Mars far below and the shimmer of Theta 9's force field flickering against the dust storms. A perfect place to disappear. If Eli were here, he'd crack a joke about retirement plans. Instead, I got silence and the faint hum of engines. I twisted until I could reach the control pad on a nearby crate with my boot. 1 kick. 2. The third cracked it open. Inside was an alien interface core. Glowing blue, buzzing softly. My mind kicked into gear. Eli had been the tech genius, but I'd learned a few tricks between arguments. I maneuvered until my visor cable connected to the core's port. The feed spiked my display with Crixorian text, their code webbing across my vision like electric vines. I searched for their communication network and found something better, a visual broadcast channel. An idea sparked. If the aliens believed in ghosts, I was about to haunt the hell out of them. 10 minutes later, every Crixorian terminal in Theta 9 flickered alive, showing Eli's face. Not real, of course, but good enough to make hearts, or whatever organs they had, skip. He appeared pale, eyes glowing faintly, voice distorted. "You executed the wrong human," the image rasped. "I see you, Zerkel." Chaos followed like music. From my cell, I watched through the feed as guards stumbled over each other, screaming in panic. One shouted something that translated to Echo Soul, their term for a vengeful spirit. Superstitious idiot. The uprising spread faster than any virus. Alarms wailed, plasma bolts flew, and somewhere deep in the base, an explosion shook the hull. While they tore each other apart, I worked on freeing myself. The magnetic cuffs were connected to the same power relay as the environmental controls. I rerouted the energy, shorted the system, and the cuffs snapped open. Gravity reactivated mid-fall, slamming me to the deck. I limped to the console and initiated a data transfer of Eli's chip. His final file labeled Iris. It decrypted to a map, not of Mars, but of Holt's personal escape route leading to a hidden shuttle docked above the base. Of course he had an exit strategy. He always did. I grabbed a rifle from a fallen guard and started running, the corridors around me trembling with explosions and alien screams. Over the comm, Holt's voice cut through the static, smooth and sharp. "Still chasing ghosts, Briggs? You should have stayed buried with him." I smiled, teeth bloodied. "Funny," I said, stepping into the elevator toward the dock. "He's the one helping me finish the job." The elevator stopped with a metallic sigh, and the doors slid open to reveal the upper dock. Smoke curled from burning conduits, alarms blaring like a dying orchestra. Holt's shuttle sat at the far end, engines humming, a sleek white contrast against the chaos. He stood near the ramp, his once pristine uniform stained with dust and blood. When he saw me, he smiled like we were back at briefing, ready for another mission. "You never did know when to quit, Lena," he said. "Eli rubbed off on you." I lifted the rifle, steady but silent. Holt raised a hand as if calming a child. "You think you know the truth, but Eli wasn't the hero you made him out to be. He made the deal first." The words hit like a backdraft. I hesitated, finger hovering over the trigger. Holt's voice softened, almost pitying. "He traded classified data to lure the Crixorians into a trap. It worked, until they realized he was lying. His death wasn't my doing, Lena. It was his own mistake." He took a step forward. "You're fighting for a man who was already damned." I laughed, bitter and tired. "Then I guess I'm just keeping him company." I fired. The bolt grazed his shoulder, sending him stumbling back into the ramp. He shouted a command, and 2 drones descended from the ceiling, weapons primed. I dove behind a crate as plasma fire scorched the metal around me. Every breath burned, every move felt like swimming through fire. I rolled out, shot 1 drone, and sprinted forward. Holt grabbed a sidearm, firing wildly as sparks rained between us. The second drone exploded, throwing me off balance. He lunged, tackling me against the railing. We struggled, boots slipping on the slick floor, his hand closing around my throat. "You think killing me fixes anything?" he spat. "The system built us to be disposable." I grabbed a loose cable from the deck, jammed it into his chest plate, and triggered it. Electricity surged. His scream was sharp and short. He fell hard, the smell of burnt circuits filling the air. I stood over him, chest heaving, rifle shaking in my grip. "No," I said. "It fixes enough." I stumbled toward the console and uploaded Eli's iris file into the outpost's mainframe. The false defense codes spread through the network like wildfire, baiting the Crixorians into revealing their real plans. Outside, their citadel erupted in red light, explosions crawling across the horizon like fire ants. The base trembled, klaxons wailing. I triggered the self-destruct sequence, Eli's final voice message echoing through the speakers. "If we go down, we take the deal with us." I smiled through the smoke. "Good call, partner." As I climbed into the last evac shuttle, the ground split beneath the citadel. Flames reached for the stars. Mars burned in silence. I looked back once, through cracked glass, and whispered, "They executed the spotter, but they never saw who was watching the watchers."